Hello, my name is Laura Griffin. I am a student representative of the Palos Verdes Peninsula School District, and I firmly urge the continuation of CTE and SoCal Rock because it uniquely allows students to fill in the gaps which high school does not necessarily cover. For example, STEM or even applicable jobs. So therefore, SoCal Rock uniquely does help in this sense. And so thus I urge the continued funding of CTE and SoCal Rock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Diane Damian, and I am a parent and the recording secretary at Rancho Vista PTA. I have 2 children, one in elementary and one in middle school, and I personally went to SoCal, as they called it, SCROC in those days, and way back in 1982, and it was very instrumental for me. Gave me confidence, gave me skills in order to I could get a job, and then I ended up extending my education at the community college at El Camino. So I think this type of school, like as others have said before me, not everyone is ready fresh out of high school to go right into college. Sometimes you need that time. You need time for other programs. Sometimes the programs that they offer there opens your mind and your possibilities to further your education later when you're ready. But it also can give you, be instrumental as it was for me in getting a job while you have that growth, that time. So I'd like to encourage Governor Brown to provide funding for CTE and save SoCal Rock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Peterson. I'm a parent in the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District. I would like to urge Governor Brown to provide the funding necessary for CTE and to save SoCal Rock. The reality is that the training that people receive at SoCal Rock is important to our communities. We need the kind of jobs that people get coming out of SoCal Rock. One example straight from my life is my plumber went to SoCal Rock. We all need plumbers. Sometimes we really need plumbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very true. Good morning. My name is Nancy Lacasse, and I'm representing the Metropolitan Education District. They're the Northern Cal version of SoCal ROP, as well as Clovis Unified and the California School Finance Reform Coalition, which is comprised of 54 school districts throughout the state. And we're very supportive of the chair's motion this morning and hope that you'll adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further comments, the motion's been made and seconded. We do not have all of our members here, but why don't we start with the roll call?
Mr. Marisucci?
Aye.
Chavez? Jababne?
Aye.
Nistande?
Aye.
Ching?
Okay, so we have 3 of the 5 voting aye. That motion will pass, but we will keep the roll open for our other members to add on with their votes. Thank you very much for all of those in attendance on that agenda item. Next item is an update on the California Career Pathways Trust. We'd like to invite back Ms. Ramos from Department of Education and Ms. Ton Quinlivan from the Community College Chancellor's Office. Oh, actually, Deborah Jones from the Community College Chancellor's Office.
Monique Ramos on behalf of the Department of Education. I'd just like to make a clarifying comment on the last panel. The department has pulled back its report on information about CTE enrollment in CTE teachers due to an error found, and we will be working on clarifying that and reissuing the report. In regards to the Career Pathway Trust, last year the legislature allocated $250 million for the Career Pathways Trust. It was a grant program that encouraged LEAs to participate in regional partnerships with community colleges and businesses. The deadline for submitting grant applications was March 28th of this year. There are 3 categories of grants. There are 10 regional consortium grants at $15 million, 15 regional or local consortium grants at $6 million, and 15 local consortium grants at $600,000. Those are a maximum grant amount, not a required amount. Grant recipients will receive 50% in the 14-15 school year, 35% in the 15-16 school year, and 15% in the 16-17 school year. This rollout of grant dollars ensures that the grant will be spent on startup costs and that the consortium will be able to support the ongoing activities long term. And we have hot off the presses the amount of applications. We received 123 applications. Of those, 27 are from community colleges and school districts, 15 from county offices of education, 18 from direct funded charters, and 62 from school districts. Of the grant types, we received 28 regional consortium grants. Those are at the maximum of $15 million. We received 55 for the local or regional consortium. That's at the maximum of $6 million. And we received 39 for the local consortium, and that's at a maximum of $600,000. Lastly, there was a technical computer problem that prohibited, it appears, 10 potential grantees from submitting their application. We will be reopening the computer program for one day tomorrow for those 10 potential grantees to resubmit their applications, and we have notified all interested parties. Lastly, the outcomes, the department will submit a report to the legislature on December 1st of 2016 that discusses student academic indicator outcomes, graduation data, attainment of certifications, transfer readiness, and post-secondary enrollment about the outcomes of the consortiums. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Let's move on to Ms. Jones. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Deborah Jones, Dean of Career Education Practices at the Chancellor's Office. I want to say two things. One, our community colleges have been working for 2.5 years on regional models, like you heard from Vice Chancellor Von Quinlivan, and we're ready for this. They're working with the K-12 districts for about 7 years with the SB 70 and currently the SB 1070 funding. And I do want to reiterate that this was a collaborative process with the California Department of Education, and that we were involved in from the very beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for our panelists? Actually, I think we may be able to combine some questions, at least some of my questions, with the next panel, the adult education. And so, unless I see any questions now, we'd like to move on to the adult education report. So, Mr. Steenhausen, LAO, Mr. Rodriguez, Department of Finance, Ms. Jones, and Ms. Ramos. Starting with Mr. Steenhausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul Steenhausen with the Analyst's Office. Sargent is distributing a handout titled An Overview of California's Adult Education System, which I will briefly go through. Adult schools, which are run by school districts, and the California community colleges are the state's main providers of adult education. As you can see in the figure on page 1 of the handout, adult education includes a number of instructional areas, from adults to disabilities to career technical education to English as a second language and parenting. Page 2 of the handout, you can see adult schools historically have been funded through a restricted categorical program. Now, that money was flexed by the legislature 5 years ago, and school districts ended up shifting about half of the funds for adult education to kindergarten through 12th grade instruction. Community colleges, meanwhile, continue to fund adult education through their general purpose money apportionments, which we talked about at the beginning of the hearing on career technical education. I just wanted to point out at the bottom of page 2 that the California Department of Education allocates federal adult education funds to providers, which include the adult schools, community colleges, as well as other providers such as libraries. Page 3 of the handout, we've discussed in, our office has discussed in our December 2012 report. There are a number of strengths of the system, historic strengths of the system. Most notably, you have 2 large segments with extensive experience working with adult learners. And even with flexibility and budget cuts over the past few years, still have education sites throughout the state. Our report identified a number of problems with adult education, though. For example, inconsistent and conflicting state-level policies for adult schools and community colleges. The state currently has multiple statutory policies with regard to fees. Assemblymember DeSanti, you had asked about teaching credentialing earlier. Currently, instructors must have a credential to teach adult education in an adult school, but they do not need a credential to teach adult education in a community college. So it's just another example of inconsistencies and conflicting policies. There's a real opportunity we found for coordination between adult schools and community colleges, but despite operating in the same geographic areas, in the past we found that providers generally have not jointly planned course offerings, aligned coursework in clear sequences or pathways for students, or collaborated in other meaningful ways. Page 4 just provides a summary of what the legislature and governor have done to date. Throughout last year, the legislature heard this issue, including in this committee a number of times. The legislature and governor ended up making a number of decisions for the 13-14 budget year. One of them was to eliminate adult education as a restricted categorical program and fold those monies into the LCFF with a 2-year maintenance of effort requirement, similar to one placed on ROCPs. And the Budget Act and Budget Trailer Bill, AB 86, provided $25 million in planning grants for a new adult education consortium program. This regional approach that you've been talking about so much today was agreed upon by the legislature for adult education. These planning grants are to be jointly administered by the Community College Chancellor's Office and the California Department of Education. And we have representatives from both agencies here. And then those funds are for providers to develop integrated program plans in career technical education, apprenticeship, elementary and secondary education, ESL, citizenship, and adults with disabilities. AB 86 includes reporting requirements and intent language on funding for 2015-16. Specifically, there's a requirement for CDE and the Chancellor's Office to release a report by March 2014 and then March 2015 on progress in rolling out this new consortium approach. And I'm told that March report is just out today, so you might be able to hear more about that in a bit. There's also intent language for the legislature to work toward developing common policies affecting adult schools and community colleges, such as those different fee policies and credentialing policies, as well as intent language for the legislature to provide funding for these consortia beginning in 2015-16 to actually roll out these, to fund these plans that they're currently developing. Page 5, we have some recommended next steps. We recommend the legislature use the next 2 years to deal with some implementation details. Just to highlight the last one, determine a methodology for allocating future funds to consortia. That's an issue this committee heard and talked about last week in the Sub 2 hearing on community colleges when you're talking about enrollment growth, allocation formula, and making sure that new formula is aligned with the new adult ed program. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me deviate slightly from the agenda. The motion was made earlier and seconded, and we started taking a vote on the motion to adopt placeholder language to establish CTE as a state priority and ensure that local educational agencies continue to provide regionally coordinated CTEs through ROCPs. I would like to add on to the roll.
Chavez. Aye. Ting.
Aye.
Okay, so the remaining items will not involve a vote, but Did we? Okay, and we can also add on for the first issue and vote taken, which was
Chavez?
Yes, yeah. There we go. Love those farmers. All right, love those farmers. Thank you. Next is Mr. Rodriguez. Yes.
Chair, members, Mario Rodriguez, Department of Finance. As noted in the agenda, we don't have a proposal in the governor's budget related to adult education, but what we did do in our summary document was reinstate our commitment to ensuring that whatever takes place over the next few years, whether it be legislation or the governor's budget next year, that it supports the current planning process that's underway and it doesn't disrupt it. And that our commitment is to, in 15-16, come out with the dollar amount.
Okay. So. All right. Thank you. Ms. Rose. Jones, yes.
Good morning. Thank you again, Deborah Jones, Chancellor's Office. I want to talk to you a little bit about the work that has been done by the Cabinet and the work group. And I also have copies, the first 15 copies of the March report that came off the press this morning. They will be also in your mailbox, delivered to you. They are on the website as we speak. So these are for you. So planning is underway. March 5th, the Board of Governors from the Chancellor's Office approved the 70 grants. We had 72 consortia. 4 of those combined into 2 consortia for a larger footprint, be able to leverage funds, and we have 70 working regional consortia. Like I said, planning is underway. They have, by AB 86 legislation, several tasks. They need to evaluate current levels of adult education programming. That's including programs in correctional facilities. Who are the partners? Who currently provides adult education? They also have to evaluate the need, looking at data that we have supplied on the website, as well as their own data, looking at the need in those 5 areas that the LAO was talking about. They need to address the gaps. So we have what's provided, what's the need, and how are we going to fill those gaps. They need to align programs. They need to look at transitions, pathways, career lattices, offerings, who's doing what, look at duplication, and look at that gap. Also in the legislation, it talks about accelerating a student's progress. And that's not just putting a student through a program faster or more quickly, but it's really looking at those strategies, contextualization, modularization, scaffolding that do accelerate a student's progress through an adult education program. They need to collaborate on the provision of professional development, and they need to leverage current regional structures, and we've talked a lot about regional structures today. The work group has been involved in maintaining and creating a website. It is the ab86.cccco.edu. It is updated almost daily. We've been giving weekly webinars on technical assistance, different strategies throughout the entire process. The last webinar had 70 people. The website has been visited by almost 20,000. There are 8,000 unduplicated visitors to the website. We met last week at one of our monthly meetings with teacher, faculty, and instructor organization representatives, CFT, AFT, UTLA, Academic Senate, and CCAE. We will continue to meet with them to strengthen teachers' and faculty's involvement in the local planning process. We will be putting together a survey, a pre- and a post survey, to determine what locally is happening in teachers' involvement now and in 6 months. We also are modeling a shift in culture, a shift in shared understanding about the 2 programs, and we have grown a foundation in respect and understanding for what the 2 systems do. Very important. As a work group, we have identified, and as a cabinet, we have identified state-level issues that mirror and align with those that you just heard about from the LAO. We need to talk about metrics, outcomes from an adult education program, and a data collection system, an accountability system, like I said, focused on outcomes, assessments. Every college, every school has an assessment. They're readiness assessments. They say to a student, you're now ready and you'll be successful in this program. Well, what we're finding out is that there's a misalignment in these assessments, and sometimes a student will leave one program and not be successful or not be adequately prepared for the next program. So there needs to be, we need to look at that issue. The funding model was, again, addressed by the LAO. And then the state level responsibilities, technical assistance, monitoring, data collection, reporting. We're working on that. We have a statewide reporting system that all consortia will be reporting into, and their first reporting date will be July of this year, and we will receive information about the evaluation that I began talking about, the current levels of adult education programming in their region, and we will be updating you as we get information. Thank you.
Thank you. And Department of Education.
Good morning, Monique Ramos, Department of Education. So I'm briefly going to discuss the report that was hot off the press today. So the report discusses the collaborative process that the department and the Chancellor's Office went through in the implementation of AB 86. It describes how the two entities established the AB 86 cabinet, which then established the AB 86 work group. It goes through the it goes through the process of implementation, thank you, and discusses the background activities and the work done to get to the point of actually putting out the grant dollars. It goes through the outreach that both organizations have gone through, as mentioned, the website, survey of interest, stakeholder sounding boards, webinars, and town hall meetings. It also talks about key lessons learned as of this point, essentially. So the ability to overcome cultural and backgrounds differences between the two systems, feedback from the field, which is requesting planning frameworks that would promote shared leadership, reflect the diversity of California, and provide structure and supports for regional self-organizations. The report does address some challenges and concerns. So we have heard from the field it's difficult to plan for out years when LEAs and community colleges still don't know the number, essentially, of how much will be in the 15-16 budget for adult education, and the challenges related to accountability processes that are mandated for different fiscal agents, so whether it's a K-12 agent, fiscal agent, or a community college fiscal agent. Lastly, the report discusses next steps. So the plan to identify and evaluate current adult education services and identifying where there are gaps, finding linkages between the two systems and how students can transition from a post-secondary a program to the workforce. Lastly, it talks about that the department and the Chancellor's Office will continue to monitor and evaluate the planning process and provide technical assistance to the field.
Thank you. Any questions for the panel from the committee? Yes, Mr. Nastandi.
Yeah, just an attempt to clarify. So is the goal of the administration then to say we basically want adult ed to be in community colleges, except if they're not one available, then we default to the K through 12? Is that the idea?
No. The goal and what's actually laid out in law is that, kind of especially what in line with the LAO said, is that we recognize that every area of the state has kind of a different historical makeup of who offers adult education. In some areas of the state, many, many moons ago, there was a decision that the colleges are going to offer the vast majority of it. In others of the state, it was the K-12s. In other areas of the state, it was kind of a mix where they said, okay, we'll offer, the college will offer 2 levels below transfer level math or English, and then below that, we'll leave it up to the adult schools. And so what we did, the May revision, and what ultimately was generally enacted was a recognition that you can't have a one-size-fits-all policy when we have so many different regional makeups throughout the state. And so basically what we asked them to do is get together, formalize what's already kind of occurring locally, those agreements, if it's predominantly K-12, predominantly community college, or some kind of delineation.
Just have them pick the one that works, and there you go.
Generally speaking, tell us what's in the best interest of the adults in your area.
So is there any conflict with that right now? Is that working out just peachy keen?
You know, collaboration is difficult. It's difficult enough between one system, but you bring in another system, and it is difficult. We found that in the work group. But they are doing it. Many regions have done this for a long time, and they were set up and ready to go. Others are just beginning to meet for the very first time. We have 70 community college districts, 72 community college districts involved, and almost 400 school districts involved.
Let me rephrase my question, hopefully end with this. Do you need any further direction from the state? Do you say we must do this, or are you guys just capable of handling it on your own and we don't need to be involved anymore as far as dictating what needs to be done?
You know, I presented a framework of what our needs are as far as the challenges. We have the best people at the table between the CDE and the Community College Chancellor's Office to do this work, and we have brought in the field and a panel of experts. We have unidentified issues we're talked about with the funding, with the accountability system, with the metrics. So that I can tell you. Monique?
I think just also, you know, we're providing you a report next year as to what our findings are. And at that time, you know, it's up to the legislature to make the decision how to proceed.
Can I ask the LAO real quick? It says resolve conflicting state-level policies at adult schools and community colleges. The conflicting state-level policies, are you making headway in solving that, or is that just, do you see that as an ongoing issue? Do you think they're tackling that?
We see that as something that can impede the ability of providers to form strong collaborations.
And what exactly is that conflict?
So
An
think
example.
about, yeah, an example would be, well, funding is part of it, fees. Think about if you're a community college and you offer a, say, pharmacy technician program. If you offer on a credit basis, if you offer that program on a credit basis, there's a $46 per unit charge. If you offer on a non-credit basis, law says you cannot charge a fee for it. And if for adult schools, they can charge whatever they want up to the full cost of instruction. So you can have situations where you have providers come together, adult schools and community colleges, and say, look, we'd like to do pharmacy tech. We're really good at that. You're better at the auto tech. Maybe have somebody else, say a library, work on literacy and some others. And then you run into this problem, well, I can't charge for it. Only you can charge for that. They need more direction. Another instance is the minimum qualifications for faculty. You might have a highly qualified instructor in adult education, and the adult school says, well, I can't hire them. I'm sorry. We agreed that I'm going to take on high school diploma programs. You've given me, you, the community college, have offered up a really good instructor, but I'm prohibited by law from hiring that person because they don't have a credential. So it's these kinds of things that can make it awkward and impose some barriers for the providers to really work together in a seamless way. And I should mention there is a bill, Senate Bill 173. It's a 2-year bill Senator Liu is carrying that would address some of these issues around minimum qualifications for faculty, fees, assessment and placement policies that Ms. Jones mentioned.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Dubovne, then Mr. Ting.
I think part of my question was answered with the last remarks, but I will touch on the fact that I think it's next March you guys are coming out with your joint report. Talk a little about the timing of that and how you think that will affect the outcomes and how that will affect our input as a legislative body in terms of making the decisions for funding that will be required to really, you know, put the money behind some of these programs.
So the timing is wrong if we took it at face value and said we're turning in a report in March. The governor's proposed budget comes out in January, and you need recommendations from us prior to then. So we have set up administratively in the reporting that the field is doing to us a different timeline, so that we actually have a report in October, a draft report in October, and a final draft in December to be able to give to you with recommendations. It's a tight timeline.
So in reality, we can look forward to getting something this October and probably something more concrete by December.
At least an update, yes.
Great. And then I guess my final one, can you talk about a little bit on the K through 12 districts? How are they maintaining adult education programs this year, and how will the report address what we know about this going forward?
So currently there's the maintenance of effort, and that's what districts are supposed to be doing if they want to receive money down the road. There is no monitoring of that maintenance of efforts. There are federal dollars that school districts do receive also to do adult education, and you know, they are utilizing those as well. I think part of the report is to talk about what is the statewide need for adult education. So it will address, I think, what K-12 school districts and what community colleges districts think they need in order to do adult education.